Hey guys, welcome to You the Boss podcast, episode 65. And today we're going to be talking about why playing it safe is the riskiest move. Before we get started, I wanted to say thank you to everyone that's been messaging me and sending in their different feedback and all of that kind of thing. I really appreciate it. So let's dive right in. I have a question to ask, and that question is, what if the life that you're playing it safe for to protect is the very thing that's keeping you stuck? When I first kind of saw this question as I was writing this episode, it made me think about how sometimes what we fear is what keeps us, like it kind of immobilizes us. And it brought to me, the fact that some truth behind that is that playing it safe isn't really protection. It's just more of a self-betrayal. Sometimes the safe choice is not from a point of safety, it's stemming from a point of fear. And not the kind of healthy fear that maybe would alert you if you were in danger or if there was a decision to be made and one of them was kind of like more of a no-brainer. But maybe it's just staying in the comfort zone. It's staying in the predictable routine. It's the fear of what others think. It's keeping you at that secure job because that's a safe choice. We all know someone who is one or the other of the following example that I'm going to give. And that's, the person that stays somewhere at a job, even though they feel unfulfilled, even though they dread going there every single day. That person, they stay there because there's stability, because they wouldn't have to change jobs, because they don't have an updated resume, and they've just been at this place for so long, they're not going to make as much money going somewhere else. Or the person who is a creative and they never put their work out. There's a photographer, someone who's really good behind a camera, but they just don't want to dive into that. They don't want to quote unquote be an entrepreneur, or they don't want to put themselves in a position where they let someone down, but by default, they're letting themselves down. This episode isn't to say that one is right over the other. And while I did mention the person being unfulfilled in whether they're being a creative or they're in a 9 to 5, I don't think that we should consistently chase happiness. We shouldn't chase happiness. Happiness should just be something that we feel. Because if we treat it as a place that we're going to arrive, I don't necessarily believe that we ever arrive there. It's almost like an elusive dream. But I think it's important to note that if what you're doing right now, whether that is being an entrepreneur or working a career, if you are feeling unfulfilled in that job, you can go one of two ways. And you can either go the route of doing something about it, or you should change your mind about it. And in this episode, we're going to touch both. It's going to be on both levels. But letting go of the illusion that safe is an actual thing, being in the safe zone. Safe keeps you in the known, it keeps you comfortable. But growing and joy and your purpose, they exist in the unknown. So choosing to go the safe route, quote unquote, is really not keeping you safe. It's keeping you stunted. There is a cost that is paid when you avoid risk. And that cost comes with the regret. It comes with the lack of growing, like I mentioned. It comes with delayed dreams. It comes with skills that you don't attain because you're staying in the quote unquote safe zone. You're staying in the comfort zone. And it's a future that doesn't come. It's the future that could have been. More often than not, people regret the risks that they didn't take, not the ones that they did. When there is risk associated with a decision, typically the one that has the higher risk has the greater reward. And it's not to say that you would choose between life or death situations. Sometimes it can just literally be between making a left and making it home in 15 minutes and making a right and making it home in 25 minutes. A lot of the time, we don't make decisions, and therefore the decisions are made for us. And that is when we regret them, when we're not taking those risks. The biggest regrets are shown at when people are inactive, when they allow for situations to be chosen for them. And we've all been there. We've all been in circumstances where maybe we didn't want to make a decision about something. So life just ends up, quote unquote, deciding for us. And sometimes those kinds of things happen. It is just the luck of the cards. But mostly those decisions are dealt for us because we didn't act. We didn't make decisions. And so we are self-imposing this quote unquote safe zone that's actually holding us back. It's riskier not to move. It's riskier to stay in your comfort zone than to go out and put yourself out there and go on the different interviews and change jobs and do the things because it makes more sense to stay logical. So with this episode, I want to give you guys 5 steps to break out of the comfort trap because it is a trap. You are trapped in this little zone where you think you're safe. It's going to be okay. I'm going to keep my safe job and my safe benefits. And then you don't want to get up and go somewhere else because you don't want to you don't want to make waves, and you don't want to risk not getting paid more money, and it's a waste of time to go on these interviews because they're not going to pay me, they're not going to give me the commission, etc., etc. And before I get started on those 5 steps, I do want to give you the example that I was with a company for 5 years and I worked from home for the majority of those 5 years. The first year I would go into the office once a week, but the other 4 years I was home the entire time. It was during this time that my mom got sick. I was able to take care of her because I worked from home. I was able to binge watch so many different shows and movies because I was home. It was background noise. I was able to have people over. I was able to work from the rehab center that she was in for a while because of this job. And so when it came to time for me to ask for more money, I never did. I didn't ask for more money because I was comfortable there. And I rationalized and said, well, I'm not driving there, so I'm not spending as much money. And I would talk myself out of the negotiation of the money. That was my first mistake. Number 2, I didn't apply to any other jobs because, again, I had been there a couple of years. It was a cushy work from home job. I was able to do what I was already doing. And the summer of 2019, I had gotten engaged that spring, and right at the beginning of the summer, that company put about 50 of us on a call, and they said, hey, we want to give you guys 2 choices. The one choice, if you decide not to go with the second, is we give you a severance package. We let you go at the beginning of August. Your benefits would start in October, and we send you on your way. The second choice is you can interview for a different position in the company. You can go through the interview process, and we will see if we take you and if you're going to stay with the company. If that doesn't work out, by default, you get the severance package. You will be let go. And I remember panicking. Oh my gosh, I've never been let go from a job before. What am I going to do? We just got engaged. My mom is still sick. She's living with us. What am I going to do? So I took the I'm going to say, quote unquote, risk. And I applied for a different job at the company. And I also applied for a job outside of that company. After that, I ended up getting the job. I ended up I literally had to interview for my job. Just to give you the synopsis of that process was I interviewed for the job that I was already doing. The recruiter said to me, "Okay, you have to start coming into the office." And I argued. At that point, I felt like I had fire and I had rage because I just couldn't believe that they were thinking of letting me go. I said, "Well, no, I already work from home doing this job. You wouldn't have to train me. I'm 2 hours of a commute one way. It's not feasible for me to go into the office." And I took a risk when I did that. And I thought for sure that they were going to take back their offer of giving me this more money essentially for the job that I was already doing. But they ended up saying, "You know what? No problem." I kept my job. And so I worked after that. I started basically in August. I worked August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. The pandemic happened. Now everyone is working from home. Everything shut down. And on May 5th, 2020, I get a Zoom invitation from 3 people I've never seen before. I've never seen their information. One of them I had heard was like the new head of our department or something like that. And I got on that call on May 5th, and the woman said, "Hey, we're just waiting for such and such to get on." He gets on. Hey, Pam, I'm such and such. I wanted to let you know that we're letting you go effective immediately. We will send information to your personal email on how to return equipment, etc. If you have any questions, you can guide them to, let's say her name was Sylvia. I don't remember what her name was. And he passed me on. And I lost my job in the middle of the pandemic. They let me go on pretenses of my performance. Meanwhile, I had never been let go. And that was about 8 or 9 months after they were initially letting go. And basically, it resulted that they were sweeping house from all the people that they had been paying in New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, all those different roles. They were moving them all to Florida, cutting their costs in half. And everyone that was basically on that call ended up being let go. And I remember being, first of all, devastated because it's the middle of the pandemic and I just lost my main source of income. Second of all, when I started to come up for air, I realized that the risk that I had taken because they were going to let me go 8 or 9 months prior, I applied to a different job and I was working 2 jobs. I was basically working from 8:30 a.m. to some days 10:30 p.m. And I did that for that 8 or 9 months. And then the pandemic happened. I lost that full-time job. And that other job was inside of a retail store in the mall. So the malls were closed. But I took a couple of lessons from that experience. Number one, I should have been applying for the last year and a half that I was at that company. I should have been applying to everywhere under the sun. I should have taken the risk. I should have said, you know what? Whatever it is, whatever it's going to take, whatever experience I can bring to this other place, I should leave this job. I should have taken that risk. So hint number 1 there, I regret not taking the risk sooner. Number 2, because I did take the risk of applying outside of the company, I ended up getting that other job, which had me basically work for one of the biggest tech giants in the world. I met incredible people there. I started to learn the means to produce this podcast on top of being able to get under my belt that experience of interviewing under the style that I did, of meeting with the different people that I met, of doing the different things that I ended up achieving. And I was never fully unemployed during the pandemic because I had that second job. So that entire story is to tell you that there is a bigger risk in not taking the jump than there is in taking it. So here are 5 steps to break out of the comfort trap. Number 1, get honest about the cost of playing small. Consistently, I always tell you guys, journal or reflect, but really sit and think about what your safe life is costing you. Think about what is so scary outside of that comfort zone box. Get honest about it. Weigh the real pros and cons of it. Is it really that much scarier to venture out and apply to other places? The worst that can happen is that these places don't get back to you, or you work on your resume. You never know. You can connect with people who will help you with your resume, who could be a connection into other places. Like, get honest about what it really costs for you to keep playing small. Number 2, choose growth over guarantee. Interchange the statement of, will this work out, with, will this grow me? And that's a scary one, even for me, because so often we are programmed to dive into something and think, is this going to work out? As opposed to like, what can I get from this? That takes a boss mindset. It takes a strong level head to think, will this grow me? As opposed to, will this work out? So shift from being attached to the outcome, shift to expansion, shift to growth. Number 3, normalize discomfort. Discomfort doesn't mean danger. Discomfort means things are changing. You ever go to get on like a roller coaster, or you go to do something new and exciting, something that maybe you've been wanting to do, and all of a sudden you're nervous, your palms are sweating, maybe you're a little jittery. It's not because of danger, it's because of excitement. Sometimes being uncomfortable is we confuse it for danger, but being uncomfortable is actually a rush. It's fun. So teach your nervous system that new doesn't mean unsafe. New means something of growth. Put yourself in small situations of risks. Maybe a little bit of public speaking, launching a project, posting something vulnerable as practice. Those little different things, which leads me into number 4. Make micro brave moves. Do those daily. Sometimes a risk is not you jumping off of a cliff into 100 feet of water. Sometimes it's just a little pivot of your foot that nudges you a little bit and puts you in a different place. Maybe send that email, maybe apply for that role that you think you're not quote unquote qualified for. Post the video, speak your truth without hurting others, of course, but speak your truth. Put it out there. Number 5, audit your environment. This one is so big. We've been conditioned to think that if we've been friends with someone for 10, 15, 20 years, that they need to remain in our constant environment. And sometimes those friendships are background friendships where it's like, of course they were there for this life-changing event that I was celebrating. Of course they are there. We talk, every couple of days, and we touch base and we do these things and we're very close. But sometimes they are not the main event of your environment. So surround yourself with people who normalize big moves. Surround yourself with people who are close to the fire, people who are warm, who are crispy, who are maybe even doing what you want to do. Get yourself in the rooms, both physically and virtually, where being bold and being uncomfortable is normal. This is important because you're not going to grow if you do not put yourself in those rooms. If you don't audit your environment, how are you supposed to make those micro brave moves daily? Who around you is doing that? If you're the only person doing something in a growth perspective in your circle, then you need to change your circle. Bottom line, you need to if you want to be a giant, you cannot be with people who are not giants. You need to put yourself in the position to grow, to let your environment push you to grow. I mentioned before my story, and I may have mentioned it before on this podcast, but I definitely told the story in full about how me being safe backfired on me. And it would have backfired on me if I wouldn't have applied to that second job and just stayed at the company. Like, I really would have been in trouble at that point in time, because it was a time where I was able to collect unemployment and all those other things, and that did work out in its favor. If I was ever going to be in an unemployed situation, it was definitely during 2020 that it would have mattered. But it backfired on me that I stayed at that job for as long as I did, because I didn't think that I could make more money, because I didn't think that I could go to another company and work remote, and it was working for me. It was doing what it needed to do in its time, and I was just holding on to it because I had, I started to interview for these other places, and there were places hiring that I had to physically go there for $15-$20 an hour, and I'm like, I'm close to making $30 an hour. This is not going to work out. And I don't like to live in the circumstance of like, I wish I knew then what I know now. But truthfully, if I knew then what I know now, I don't think I would have made it 5 years in that company. I probably would have left before that whole situation happened. And maybe I wouldn't have met the people that I ended up meeting at the job that I did end up getting part-time. But on that level of risk, I definitely would have trusted myself more. I would have acquired a faster time to trust myself if I had done that. So as we wrap up here, I do want to ask you, what's one thing you've been avoiding because it feels risky? Is it updating your resume? Is it sending your resume to people? Is it joining those different conversations on LinkedIn? Is it reaching out to old networks of saying, hey, are you still at this company? What's going on? I want to encourage you to do one brave thing today. The day that you're listening to this episode, I want to encourage you to do one brave thing today. Maybe that is updating your resume. Maybe that is sending it out to a quote unquote job you're not qualified for. Maybe it is sending that pitch. Maybe it is messaging that one photographer or that one podcaster or that one creator and say, hey, can we collaborate together? Hey, I had some questions. I was wondering if you could answer them for me when you had some time. Comfort isn't keeping you safe. It's keeping you stuck. As always, I want to recommend a book that I'm currently listening to on Audible. I am not reading this book. And the reason I'm not reading it is because I'm reading something else physically, and I like to listen to things in the background. And sometimes I try to make them, just different audiobooks. And the book that I'm currently listening to is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. And this teaches you how what we're worrying about is holding us back, and how action is what is going to catapult you. It feeds into the fear of failure, which we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, and how judging ourselves, limits our lives, and just shifting into being in a courageous living life. So definitely check out that book. Let me know your insight if you do listen to it. If you listen to like a SparkNotes version of it, let's definitely touch base on that. Before we end this episode, I want to encourage you, as always, to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast. We are on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review. We definitely appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Come back again next week for another episode of You the Boss podcast.